everybody, and welcome to the Empowered CPA podcast. I'm your host, Dawn Scott. Today, I am joined by a fellow podcaster who has such an amazing platform. I cannot wait for her to tell you. Janine is just this larger-than-life personality who has a alternate persona when she shows up for her podcast, and I love her so much. And she has some accounting questions, so we're just gonna go for it, and we're gonna see what she has to say.
Hi, Dawn. Thanks for having me on the Empowered CPA. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm so excited.
I am so excited. That was an amazing introduction. So thank you so much. Yeah. So I have always been bad at accounting. And so this is a fascinating business to me. Quick story, Florida State University, we're talking 2000 and I think I took the course Intro to Financial Accounting 2001 at FSU. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I took the first exam and got an F, and then I dropped the class. And then from then on, I've avoided taxes like the plague.
That's common.
It is?
Okay, so small side shoot. So in my university, half of the first accounting class fails. So yeah, half. And then the second accounting class, which are majors, any business major is required to take those first two accounting classes. So half have to retake that first one. And then the half that make it to the second, about half of them fail that one. And so that's actually not that bad.
It is so overwhelming. When did you know that you were good at this? Like, when did you say, I can do this? Yeah.
So I changed my major in college 5 times. I started, 4 of them were in the business school, so it wasn't like that terrible. But I did take a short stint into dietary sciences, which obviously I was really great at because I can't even say the name right.
I don't know what it is either, so don't feel bad.
I wanted to be a dietitian for a while because I was like, let's talk about food all day long. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that there's a lot of science behind that, and I suck at science. So,
so you're
yeah. So I started. I did marketing, and I realized that marketing is very subjective, and I'm not into that. And I realized there were a lot of really outgoing, fabulous people in marketing. And also when the economy turns bad, those are usually the people who get laid off first. And so none of that was appealing. And so then I went into finance, and I love the numbers and I love the calculations. And then I realized that I was going to be in sales at a brokerage, and that I had no control over what the market did, but I had to deal with whatever the market did. And so that was also a little too gray for me. And so I was with one of my teammates who went on to law school, insanely intelligent. And she's like, hey, I'm going to take an accounting class. And I was like, phew. And funny story, my uncle, right before I went to college, said to me, you should major in accounting. And I laughed at him. I was like, there's no way I'm majoring in accounting. He's like, Dawn, trust me. Like, you can do anything you want to do. Just major in accounting. And I was like, you're stupid. I'm not doing that. So I took my first accounting class with my teammate thinking, she's insanely smart, and I'll just try to glean as much of that. And at least I have someone to like lean on. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there, and they were going through all these concepts, and I was like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And people around me were like, what are they talking about? And I'm like, it's easy. Look at what she's talking about. And they're like, this is not easy. And I was like, yeah, it is. Like, listen, just it goes like this and this and this. And that was the first moment where I was like, all right, like everyone else thinks this is really hard. And it is hard. Like, I had to study a lot, but like I understood conceptually what we were talking about. And so that was the moment where I was like, oh, dang it, my uncle was right.
I wish I had part of your brain, because I did not get that gene. And I was an art, I changed my major as well. I was an art major because my background's in art history, and I'm like an art nerd by trade. So I thought for a moment, because everyone was like, oh, get a business degree instead, because you're going to be a starving artist forever. You might as well just get a business degree. And so I had to take the Intro to Financial Accounting and like business statistics and business calc and all those things.
Supply chain management? Did you have to take supply chain?
No.
Oh, that was fascinating.
But I did have to take micro and macroeconomics, and I dropped those 2 and then changed my major after that and the financial accounting. I was like, this is not for me. I'll stick with art.
Yeah.
So I did. I got a studio art degree from FSU with a minor in like art history and humanities.
Happiness.
Yeah.
Is there like a minor in happiness?
Right. I was like, this is like not my wheelhouse. And ever since then, I avoid it. It gives me anxiety. Every time tax season comes around and I just
shut down.
And then I've had some really bad experiences hiring accountants. So like 2 years ago, he didn't file when he said he filed. So it's just been a nightmare. And then during the pandemic, to get the IRS on the phone
it's still impossible.
Laughable.
Yeah, still impossible.
Laughable. My friend actually, this was hilarious. She actually mapped out all the different numbers and buttons you press to get someone on the phone with the IRS. And it was like a formula.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Press this, press that.
Right.
And I didn't actually do it because I was so overwhelmed by it. But apparently she spoke to an individual. Yeah.
That's nice. Even as a professional calling, so there's two lines. There's the general population line, and then there's what we call the practitioner line, which you have to have certain credentials to be able to call into that. And that one is nice because usually the line is shorter and you speak with someone who has a little more authority. And even that line, it's so busy that you call in and they're like, we're sorry due to high call volume. And then they hang up on you. Yeah. And so it's frustrating because if you're already nervous and timid about it, that just exemplifies how awful and stressful the process is. Whereas I'm like, oh, screw this. Like I just call because I'm not scared of on the other line.
So how do I get over my anxiety of taxes and accounting? Like, how do I get over that?
So
I'm drinking my Celsius, by the way. It's fabulous. So talk about caffeine and anxiety.
Let's get sponsored by Celsius.
Yeah, totally. Oh my God, I love them. They're great.
I want to get sponsored by tequila. Total side note. Can we do that?
Tequila's my drink of choice too. Like Casamigos or like something like that. Oh my God.
So many, yeah.
I love tequila's my jam. Yes.
Yeah. Let's get sponsored by tequila.
Oh my God, so great.
If you guys know some tequilas who want to sponsor accountants, you just reach out to me.
They deserve it. Accountants deserve tequila.
We do.
Absolutely.
It's good for our happiness. That's a great idea. I don't discriminate though, like other
Tax
workers.
and tequila.
Ooh.
Oh, good podcast.
Yeah,
name.
Probably not taking any of that information to heart when I've had too many of those. It's probably looser. It's looser guidance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Carry on.
So what I usually start all of my calls with is with a potential client. It's very important that you identify, are you comfortable doing your taxes by yourself?
No.
Okay. So
absolutely not.
So if you are, then TurboTax or any number of those online things are perfectly wonderful. If you have, a W-2 and maybe you own a house and you have a couple children, like that's a pretty straightforward thing. And if you're comfortable with it, then that's okay. When you start getting into owning businesses and having rental properties and those types of situations, that's typically what I see tipping the scale to needing some professional help. So what I find is the best way to start the process of finding somebody is ask your friends, do you have somebody that you love? What do you love about that person? Because some accountants are really, really good with, the really big companies. They're very structured. They wear these fancy suits. They have high-rise offices, and that is awesome for that type of environment and that type of person and that type of business. And then you find that some people are creatives or artists, and that situation in your mind gives you, I see your face, it gives you complete anxiety. And so ask a friend who's an artist or self-employed, do you have a CPA? Ask them what you like about them. Are they, my firm is very tech forward, and I require all my documents for my clients to be uploaded digitally. And so, if you're someone who hates that, I'm not going to be a good fit for you. Are you somebody who wants to sit down with somebody in person? Like, identify the things that would make you comfortable. And
Good point.
When I start a potential client call, I say, I can be the best CPA in the entire world, but if you're scared of me or you're hesitant to call me, I'm not going to be very helpful to you because I can't help you with things I don't know about. So find someone you're comfortable with. Make sure they're licensed. They're CPA licensed, so that's what I have. There are enrolled agents who are people who have taken some coursework and then taken a test directly with the IRS. They have all of the, they have all of the ability to speak on your behalf in tax court. They're very knowledgeable in the tax environment. So that's also a good, idea. I have strong opinions about the H&R Block type.
Yeah, tell me about that, because I have friends that swear by H&R Block, and I've done TurboTax before. It's not like I haven't, but my life partner / ex-husband /
that guy,
heterosexual partner for life, he is really good at it and probably should have been an accountant because he just gets it.
Right.
He just gets it. He walks me through it. I just give it to him, and he kind of
he takes care of it.
He takes care of it.
So to work at H&R Block, there's typically like the head guy or gal who has either an enrolled agent or a tax identification number of some sort, and they oversee the whole office. And then everybody that you actually meet with physically at H&R Block is taking about a 2-week course.
That's it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you say 2 weeks?
It may be 2 weekends. I don't know the particulars.
And they are certified to the public to...
No, they're able to work under the guy above them. And sometimes I've found some gems. I don't want you to think I'm totally crushing on these people thinking that this is awful. There are some really amazing people who are insanely technically sound, they just want to work seasonally, or they don't want the stress of, whatever. However, I find them to be expensive for what you're getting, if we're being honest. They're rarely around when their letters come back. They're going to charge you a fortune when you get a letter, and typically it's because of something they did or didn't do. So I don't love sending people that way. I would actually rather see you almost do it by yourself on TurboTax than go to H&R Block.
Let me ask you a weird question, because there are so many people that I've spoken with that say, my accountant, this is their fee, or... And there's so many different types of fees. So
yes,
how do you figure out which?
Yeah. So
how do you navigate that? Because it seems a little confusing as to what you're getting for that, or are you being screwed and they're just charging you more? What are you getting for that service?
Right. So a good example is say you go to H&R. Well, so say you do TurboTax. TurboTax is very clear, except for this whole free file thing. We won't talk about that. They're very clear. TurboTax charges a set fee, and then you can pick, do you want audit protection, but it's very clear what you're paying TurboTax. When you go somewhere like an H&R Block, it's per schedule. So, you'd say I have a 1040, and then that's a base price. And then I have 2 W-2s, so they add that into the price. And I have a small business, so they add a Schedule C, because that's where we report that. And they usually will give you a fee schedule, but the problem is you're going to look at that schedule and say, I don't know what a Schedule C is, I don't know what a Schedule E is, I don't know what this. So you have no idea how to navigate what your final price is going to be. And the thing that I dislike seeing very much is we have these things called bank products. So I don't personally use bank products. I have a lot of opinions about them, which I'll keep mainly to myself. When you go to some places, they'll say your refund was X, and I'm just going to take my fees out of it when I file for you. And the rest of the refund will just get deposited in your bank account.
Interesting.
And so that's called a bank product, because what they do is they deduct their fees. There's some magical banking thingies that happen. And what I typically see in those situations is their fees are a lot higher than they would be otherwise. But people don't
because people
care.
wouldn't have hired them if they knew if that fee was going to be that high.
Or they don't care because they're still getting a refund. Mm-hmm. So in their mind, they're like, well, I'm still getting money back. But if you were to look at that fee versus another fee for someone who didn't utilize, and I know a lot of really amazing accountants who use bank products because, I have some colleagues who serve markets where it's impossible for their clients to pay their fees up front. It's just, it works better for everybody to just take them out of their fees. So it's not always predatory, but it definitely turns predatory very quickly, and it's a slippery slope. So we all see during tax season, you could drive down the street and there's little signs on the grass that are like 2 kids get this much back, 3 kids get this much back.
Yeah, what is that about?
So those are talking about child tax credits or things that are available to everybody. There's no special sauce that they're doing. They're just not explaining the full picture. They're just saying if you do this and this, and so it creates for people who need money quickly or live in a way that they can't upfront pay those fees. It incentivizes them to do things quickly to get their money quickly. And so, sometimes that's really helpful for people. And so I don't want to say that that's necessarily awful, but it definitely is more expensive than if you have the time to wait.
That makes sense. And speaking of quickly, it has been 3 or 4 months now, and I still have not received my tax return. And it was mailed in because the person who did my taxes told me that the accountant before that didn't file properly, and it didn't include the $1,400 stimulus that was owed from a couple of years ago. And it is just beyond confusing. Every day I look in my bank account and I'm like, where's my refund?
Right.
It is very frustrating. So how can I accelerate that process to see where I'm falling in line as far as...
So we can't... Okay, so there's 2 ways to file your taxes. We'll start there. You can e-file, which is predominantly always the best, timeliest option, and you could mail in your copy. If you mail in your copy, always send it certified so that you know when they receive it. First line of business.
Okay, I don't think we did that.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So 2, processing times in the last several years have been out of control. It's taking up to a year sometimes for these return. I know, you should see how big her eyes are right now.
Did you say a year?
I did. So one way that you...
So I can pay for my accountant for next year with my tax return.
Probably,
yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Good stuff.
One way to find out where you are and see if it's even been received is if you go to the IRS website, there's a button that says, "Where's my refund?" So take a copy of your return from the year you mailed in. You're going to need the tax amount that you're supposed to be refunded. So you'll plug in, I think it's like your social, your filing status probably, and then that number. And it's going to pop up a second screen and it'll say received, processed, and then whether or not the funds have been released. And if they have been released, when they were released. So you can track it that way. But once you send it, there's nothing you can do to speed up the process.
Wah, wah, wah.
I know. But the Where's My Refund is a really good tool, especially when things, typical filing acceptance for an e-file return is about 3 weeks. That's if all of your items go through the machine of the IRS and there's nothing crazy. That's typically what we're seeing. We're seeing some more delays with the child tax credit if you didn't report that properly, all the stimulus if you didn't do those properly. Mm-hmm. Those are resulting in a lot of letters, which result in holding up it's just so many letters and so much extra time, and compound that with you can't get through to the IRS. And so it's really frustrating, right? I mean, I'm sure that you would love to have that tax refund.
Why is there a holdup with reaching someone with the IRS?
So there's a couple of factors. When COVID first started, the IRS shut down their physical
office
locations. And so the essential required departments were all working remotely, and the IRS is still very antiquated. They don't use email. I have to fax, F-A-X, fax, all my documents to them.
I'm sorry.
Fax. Yeah.
This is the U.S. government we're talking about?
For security purposes, we fax everything. So I actually have like an online fax.
They don't have an e-fax?
I use e-fax, but they have physical fax. Yeah. So in the beginning, it was this thing of all the mail still coming in, and it's going into huge holding facilities, like just giant, just cramming mail everywhere. And then nobody was processing the things that physically needed to be processed, and only mandatory essential services were being done. And then we compounded that with, we saw a large amount of people leave the service because they just retired or just were like, I can't do this, which was common amongst most industries.
And a lot of people decided to just retire because it was going into a brick and mortar, or also working remotely. A lot of people didn't know how to transition to that. Exactly. And that's in all different professions.
And with the security and with, just the infrastructure required, it was very frustrating. And so we saw that. And then the process to hire new IRS agents is an insanely long months and months and months and months process. So they weren't able to backfill and rehire. And so what we saw was there wasn't capacity. There wasn't people. And for the first time, I really felt bad for IRS agents. I was like, man, you guys got it hard. This is terrible. And so recently there's been a lot of news articles about the IRS has shredded 30 million documents. We're being told that they were informational returns, but we don't really know. So then people start sending in duplicates, and then that creates a whole nother, and so it's just going to take a while, I think. And, there's not enough people answering. The people who are answering are really frustrated. I had an IRS agent tell me that it wasn't her job to help me. She hung up on me.
I'm sorry.
I know. 4 hours. 4 hours. Yeah.
It's not her job. So what exactly is she being paid for?
I don't know. She didn't clarify.
And aren't our taxes paying her salary?
Yes.
Ironically enough.
Okay.
Just making sure.
So those are all those are kind of all the things that are going into why. But it's always best to e-file.
Okay.
Going forward.
You've given me so much good advice on this podcast, and I will definitely go to the irs.gov website and look that up, because I think I had tried to do it previously and
it probably wasn't registered yet.
Oh, that's probably why. Now, after 4 months, it should be, right?
I would think so, but it may not be. So until it's received, so always send it certified, because then you know when they physically receive it. But once it's in there, then you can track the progress. And they recently added that you can track prior years, which is great. Good job, IRS. And so they are trying. They're certainly trying. There's just a lot of hurdles, and there's a lot of security. I mean, they deal with a lot of very private information. So it's a waiting game.
Okay. Well, I know exactly what I will and I won't be doing in the future. And I feel a lot more comfortable with that.
So find somebody, back to the original question, find somebody that you're comfortable with. Make sure they're credentialed in a way that at least they're able to help you through all the different steps should something happen. Because even if someone does absolutely, what we determine to be a perfect return, there's still a chance you're going to get a letter, or there's a chance that they'll disagree with something. And a lot of people don't know, but even if you receive a letter, that doesn't necessarily mean that whatever they're saying is correct. So finding someone who will explain to you what they're asking and help you navigate how to solve that is, it's an essential part of your village, because you need someone you trust, because accountants have a lot of power in your world and they can create a lot of stress. And so, it's like any lawyer or doctor, anybody who has significant influence in your day-to-day life, you want to trust them and you want to be comfortable with them. And I had a client who reached out and wanted to work with me, and he asked me for all of my different states that I'm licensed in, and he verified all of my licenses, which I loved. Because I took the test, I passed the test, and I'm actively licensed in all these places. And I appreciated that was important to him. And I think if you ask somebody that and they're like, how dare you? You should probably think that there's something wrong there. Because if someone's gone to all the effort to do all of these things, they shouldn't be offended by you fact checking them. I wouldn't think, right? So just keep all those things in mind.
You're the best, Dawn. Dawn Scott,
sigh.
Everyone. Hire Dawn, who basically lets me down easily with Vaseline.
Yeah.
Just easily lets me slow burn. It's so much better. That was good, Dawn.
Yeah, I mean, I can't solve all the problems, but I can tell you what to expect.
Thank you so much for helping me navigate through that, and it makes so much more sense. And I think I dislike the IRS a lot less.
I mean, there's still a healthy concern for operations. That's the politically correct version.
Okay.
I have a healthy concern for their operation.
A healthy concern. It's so positive.
It's positive. Yeah. Like, I'm concerned you're not going to get it together.
Do you want to work for the IRS, Dawn?
No. One of my very best college friends went to work for the IRS. I love her dearly. I will always love her dearly. I look at her professional day-to-day life, I'm pretty sure I'd rather do anything else.
Like a root canal?
Oh yeah. I'd probably. I mean, it's odd because of what I do for a living. I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to be told where to be and when to be there. I have some authority problems, which is funny because I work in a very structured environment. I would not be a great IRS agent unless I was in the fraud category, like department. I'd be a great revenue officer for fraud. But my mom, when I graduated college, her only request was whatever job I had, I didn't carry a gun. That was her only request. She's like, honey, I'd like you to one day have a husband and children. So whatever career you have, can you please not carry a gun? Because I'd like to see you get old.
That's great advice, actually.
I mean, yeah. And so I was like, well, because I interviewed with the FBI. I love forensic accounting. I'm almost done with this other certification just because I love learning about
super interesting stuff.
It's like, it's so fun and it's so intense and it's, there's no like guarantee you're going to figure things out. And
lots of people that get divorced love to hire forensic accountants. I know several people who are involved in that.
I'm litigating one right now for a client, and I will tell you, it's exhilarating, but it's also really hard emotionally for me because I look at the human aspect of what I'm doing, and I'm like, oh, like I did this huge bank fraud when I was right out of school, and the short of it is it was like millions and millions and millions of dollars in this beautiful small town that was like super close knit, and it destroyed this town. And I figured out how it was happening, and it was one of the highlights of my professional career. To this day, it was like I remember sitting there and I did all these interviews with people because something wasn't lining up paper-wise to what was, And so I remember I went over and I was, just hanging out water cooler talking with the girl who signed the bank recs. And I was like, hey, how'd you learn to do that? That's so amazing considering that it has nothing to do with what you do, She's like, oh, I don't actually do those. He just brings them to me and I sign them. And I was like,
bingo.
It's here. Like, it's totally here. This is where it's at. And I remember sitting down with the president of the bank after I put it together. I figured it out how it was happening. And I had to hide my enthusiasm because I literally was explaining to someone how his childhood friend had stolen millions of dollars from him.
Wow.
And so I personally have a hard time reconciling those different emotions.
What was his reaction to that?
It was devastating. It was, it was
like, that is insane. And
it was hard.
Can't even,
I mean, it's hard.
Was he grateful and thankful that
I think he was grateful that it was over, at least that part. And then it turned into the FBI came in and we had to take them to court, and it was very expensive for him and it was awful. And, but I was exhilarated through it. And so what I found is now I take a lot of education in it because I find it fascinating, but I don't like the actual practice of putting it into practices. But I can use parts of it to make sure that the businesses I work with protect against it. So that's how I've kind of joined those two things together and said, well, I love this work, but I hate this part of it. So how do I put it into play with my clients to try to mitigate things for them? So everyone has their thing. Mine's just weird and nerdy.
I love nerds.
Me too.
Nerds are the best.
They are the best.
Nerds and artists. That's like my wheelhouse.
That's really what we do. We do totally. Nerds and artists.
Absolutely. I'm digging it, Dawn.
I love it. I'm so glad you joined me today.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast and so informative. Good. And thank you so much for blessing me with your intense knowledge of this subject that has pained me and given me anxiety for about 2 decades.
Well, onward and upward. I'm always here. And as always, everybody, I'm just so happy to share all this knowledge with you. Hopefully it will make some part of your life easier, clarify something that you've always been wondering. And as always, if you have questions, I am here for you. Everybody, I hope you took a little bit from this. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you enjoy your shows.